there's a video that's going around Facebook again. I've seen it once, and I saw it again this week, of Kamitra Barber of Forney, Texas, being pulled over by the police on suspicion of reckless driving and having a gun. And when they pulled her over, not only did they have the wrong gender, but they also had the wrong color and model of car. They had the wrong number of people in the car. They had the wrong ages. Everything was wrong, but she was still pulled over and subjected to one of the most violent experiences anyone could ever have. And the only thing this person had in common with the reported, the actual culprits, was that she was black. And what drives me crazy, what hurts me the most about this video is when the 9-year-old boy or one of the younger kids gets out of the car with his hands up, terrified in the middle of the night with guns pointing at him. And yes, the cops did put the guns away, and then they rectified the situation as much as they could. But what bothers me the most about this situation is the length to which people will go to contort their opinions so that they can simply excuse this, and they just simply want to say that the cops were doing their job. Too many people want to say that the cops were doing their job and that race had nothing to do with this. Because as we all know, racism isn't even possible anymore. The only thing people think is racist today is the N-word, and that's even questionable. To them, the only thing that is racist are people who speak out against institutional racism. That's the world we live in. The only people that can be racist in America are the people who speak out against racism. That is the delusional, backwards, upside down world that we live in. And I normally say that they don't understand institutional racism, but that's not true. They simply don't want to understand institutional racism. They don't understand that it's institutional racism is how you view an entire group of people, and therefore how you view the individual, and then how you approach that individual, and how you expect that person to respond to you, whether you expect them to jump at your commands or whether you expect them to have to negotiate with you because you see them as an equal. Or the anger, institutional racism is the anger that you feel when someone you think should obey you has the nerve not to obey you. You don't understand. These are all things that minorities, particularly African Americans, have to deal with every time we have an encounter with the police. It's the boy versus the sir mentality. And of course, most people today wouldn't dare call you a boy, but they're certainly not going to approach you in a manner as if you are a sir. You know, they're not going to approach you with respect and then with an inquisitive mind to find out what the situation is about. They're not going to approach us as a sir, just like they did with Joseph Houseman. Yeah, Joseph Houseman walks around Kalamazoo, Michigan with an assault rifle, scaring motorists. And the police approach him as sir and negotiate with him for over 10 minutes before getting the gun away from him and excusing him. They're not going to approach us like they did the 46-year-old man from San Diego who was waving his gun around at people in the park, at kids in the park, and pointing that gun at police. And what do? They didn't shoot him with a gun. They shot him with a beanbag. And for 30 minutes, they negotiate with this guy before taking him into custody. They won't even approach us as they did James Egan Holmes, who shot over 70 people, killing 12 in the theater shooting. The police didn't kill him. The police apprehended him. And just recently, 2 men in Idaho actually shoot up at Walmart with a BB gun, but they're taken into custody. Now juxtapose that with John Crawford going through Walmart with the BB gun on a phone, not pointing it at anyone, but he doesn't go into custody. He goes to the coroner. Juxtapose all of those things, all of those other examples with the 2 seconds that passed between the time the police officers arrived at the park and the time they shot and killed Tamir Rice. Within seconds, they shoot Tamir Rice. They wrestle Eric Gardner to the ground and choke him to death over cigarettes. And just recently, 3 mall cops. It's not just the official police department anymore. It's the wannabe rent-a-cop, flashlight cops getting involved in the action. They pepper spray and smother Mackenzie Cochran over a violent phrase that he used in a store at the mall, killing him. Killed him. And that's what's crazy. It's the actions of people in authority or quasi-authority being taken out against minorities over issues that are most of the time not even jailable offenses, but it's leading to their death because they are approaching us. They are approaching minorities with the mindset of attack. No other way that you can to explain it. And this is the same thing with Kamisha Barber. She gets out of her car, and before the officers take a moment to ascertain the situation, to investigate just a little bit, they have her back up, yelling with guns, back up with her hands behind her head, and then have her kid get out of the car with his hands up. Without any question, without any hesitation, without the possibility of considering that this tan car that's supposed to be burgundy is actually tan, but it's not burgundy, that they made a mistake. That's the world we live in. And so there are Americans who will stop at nothing to justify these actions. They vilify every single victim. And they do this by starting the narrative in the most convenient place. They always start it at the altercation. Do you notice that? They don't start it at what started the confrontation or what causes the mindset of the people who create these cantankerous scenarios that lead to violence. They don't start there. No, they start at the confrontation. They started with Trayvon Martin at the fist fight. But they don't start with George Zimmerman, what led him to believe he had the authority to question a kid who was living in the neighborhood, going home to his stepfather's house to his father's house. And he stalks this kid and essentially creates a confrontation which leads to George Zimmerman getting his ass handed to him, getting beat. And then now they say because George Zimmerman was getting beat, he had the right to shoot and kill Trayvon Martin. That's where they start the narrative. They don't take a step back and say, why did George Zimmerman stalk this boy who lived in the neighborhood and was doing nothing wrong? They don't start there because they have to answer painful questions. They start in the middle and they start where the fight, that they start at the place where they can portray the young black men as violent. But ask yourself the question, if someone is stalking you, if someone approaches you in a manner that your life feels threatened, would you not fight back? They don't start with Michael Brown at this police officer pulling up next to him and telling him to get the F out of the street. Or they don't start where the police officer gets so upset because Michael Brown had the nerve not to obey his order that he turns around, comes back, and slams the door in Michael Brown. They do not start there. They simply start right at the point where the confrontation ensues. In other words, they don't recognize our right to be a human being. Because human beings have a right to protect themselves. We have the right to be angry. We have the right to be angry when we are treated unfairly, when we are confronted for no reason, when we are walking home minding our business. We have that right, but they don't recognize it because it is inconvenient for their narrative. And so if all you think racism is today is the N-word, then you're sorely lacking in the basic understanding of American society. And you are either willfully or unintentionally ignorant to the reality of racism. That the most deadly form of racism is not an N-word. It doesn't involve words at all. It involves actions. And the actions of the majority, if not all of these cases, has been the summary execution of American citizens at the hands of police or wannabe police. And now it's happening on a regular basis. It's happening almost every single week. And if you don't see it by now, you're not blind. You're covering up your eyes because you just don't want to see it.
Give us a call, 857